There are a lot of tasty treats in the world, but chocolate is one of the most interesting and appealing. But have you ever thought about where it came from? Okay, fine. Take a deep breath, close your eyes, and feel yourself in ancient Mesoamerica, where the air is thick with the smell of cacao. A very long time ago, the Mayans and Aztecs loved drinking a frothy, bitter drink made from crushed cocoa beans. It was a drink that kings and gods alike could enjoy. But how did this revered ingredient transform from a sacred elixir to the velvety confection we know today? From the royal courts of Europe to the busy chocolate shops of London in the 1600s, chocolate has had a long and interesting history. Along the way, we'll learn how to make chocolate from bean to bar, and we'll look at the science and art behind each delicious bite. So folks, come with us as we find out why chocolate is so appealing. Ground Zero. Before we jump right onto the steps, let's make sure we understand the farm's part. The cacao tree, Theobroma cacao, is where chocolate comes from. It grows best when it's hot, rainy, and shady. The fruits or pods on each tree are oval and measure about 5 to 12 inches long. There are 30 to 50 seeds in each pod. These seeds are what people call chocolate or cocoa beans. When cacao pods are ready, they turn a bright orange-yellow color. The ripening pods hang from the tree's trunk and biggest branches on short stems. They are usually picked twice a year, but they can be picked all the time. The pods are opened and their seeds are taken out after being cut off. Every seed is about the size of an apple. There is a white pulp or pith around the seeds, which look like beans and grow in 5 columns. Baba is the name of this pulp. It was used to make fermented cacao wine in Latin America as early as 3,000 years ago. To improve the taste, the baba is still on the beans after they are cleaned by hand. When the cream-colored beans are put in light, they turn purple. This is when the beans are ready to be fermented. In Africa, the heap method is used, where the beans are piled up on the ground, but in Latin America, a system of sliding boxes is preferred. In both ways, banana leaves are used to cover the beans. There are 2 to 9 days of fermentation before the beans start to turn color and start to taste like chocolate. Now let's see how chocolate is prepared step by step. Step 1. Raw cacao. Fermented and dried cocoa beans, right out of the bag, are very dangerous for microbes like E. coli and Salmonella. Outbreaks caused by chocolate are rare, but the risk means that it needs to be handled and stored properly. In simple terms, raw beans are handled like raw meat. Also, the raw beans must be carefully sorted and cleaned of the different things that are in each bag, like rotten or flat beans, stones, leaves, sticks, and so on. Another interesting fact is that tropical moth eggs often land on the surface of a cocoa bean. As soon as the beans arrive, they are all put in bags, sealed, and put in the fridge until they are roasted. This happens before any of those tiny wings have a chance to hatch. Step 2. Roasting cacao beans. In addition to killing any bacteria or moths that might be on the beans, which makes them safe to eat, roasting is also a key step in developing the cocoa bean's taste by building on the precursors that were made during fermentation. Roasting also lowers the dried beans' moisture content. Chocolatiers always try to keep the chocolate's water content as low as possible, which is about 6–8% when it arrives at the store. Also, it's important to note that roasting conditions depend on the type of bean, where it comes from, how much is used, and the taste profile that is wanted. Usually, roasters aim for 30 to 60 minutes or more at temperatures between 300 and 350 degrees Fahrenheit. The feeling of doneness is mostly subjective and based on gut. Chocolatiers mostly use smell and taste to decide what to do, but they also keep a close eye on the bean mass's temperature the whole time. Step 3. Winnowing. Now, the beans must be cracked and winnowed to separate the nibs from the shell after they have been roasted. You might be surprised to find out that the shell can make up almost 15% of the weight of a roasted bean and makes the finished chocolate taste and feel bad. In addition, the shell has a lot of heavy chemicals that are harmful. It's not a surprise that less than 1% shell content in processed nibs is considered acceptable by the business. Step 4. Grinding cacao nibs. Pre-grinding the nibs is needed in most cocoa processing systems to cut down on both the time it takes to process the cocoa and the damage it does to the tools that refine it. The nibs are ground into a thick paste called chocolate liquor, and the average particle size is about 100 microns. Also, yes, the word liquor is hard to understand because it doesn't mean booze. Step 5. Pressing cacao butter. Some of the liquor can be pressed to make cocoa butter, which makes up about half of the weight of the beans. This process takes about 65 tons of energy and an hour to 2 hours in the lab. The leftover substance, called press cake, can be turned into chocolate powder. Most chefs are used to deodorizing cocoa butter, but newly pressed butter still has the flavor compounds from the beans. Most fine chocolate has between 35 and 40% fat by weight, so this extra cocoa butter can be added to raise the end percentage. For some single origin fans, this extra butter can make or break a product's bean-to-bar status, based on whether the original liquor and extra butter come from the same batch of beans. Step 7. Refining. Now, in the refining process, the particle size of the liquor is reduced to an average of 20 micrometers. Grittiness can be detected by the human tongue at particle sizes greater than 35 microns. Nevertheless, decreasing the particle size below 20 microns results in an increase in the surface area of the cocoa butter, which causes the consistency to become unpleasantly thick. During the process of processing beans into bars, the refining stage is also the time at which other ingredients are added, such as sugar, more cocoa butter, whole milk powder, and so on. A wide variety of devices, ranging from stone mélangeurs to roller refiners, are utilized in this job. As a result of the incorporation of temperature and airflow control, certain systems, such as ball mills, function as a universal, which enables conching to take place concurrently with refining. Step 8. Conching. Next is conching, which uses heat, airflow, and movement, and is important for developing taste by getting rid of unwanted volatile compounds, and texture just by covering the solid particles with cocoa butter and lowering the moisture even more. Depending on what you want, this process could last for hours or days. But conching time by itself isn't always a good way to judge quality. Step 9. Formulation. The final recipe for a batch of chocolate is made by adding other ingredients. This can be different for each batch based on the type of bean used, the flavor profile that is wanted, and the use. The percentage on the package of finished chocolate tells you how much cocoa solids there are by weight. This includes the nibs or liquor, as well as any cocoa butter that was added. This amount only tells you how much something is, not what kind of chocolate it is. A 70% chocolate could be 70% nibs or any other mix of nibs and cocoa butter that is the same. So these numbers might not tell us much about the taste, but they do tell us how much sugar was added. The percentage of sugar is just 100 minus the percentage of cocoa, which takes into account the less than 1% extra vanilla or additives like lecithin, etc. Step 10. Sifting. Before tempering, it's helpful to sift or strain the chocolate through moving screens to get rid of any big pieces that are hard to refine, like the radicle, also called the germ stem, that comes from each bean. This tough stem tastes awful and can make the chocolate feel rough if it stays in there. Adding a pass-through strong magnet to the sifting process can also get rid of any worries about hard metals still being in the chocolate. Final step, aging chocolate. Both large producers and small batch artists are in agreement that aging finished chocolate for several weeks provides for a better, more balanced flavor. This is despite the fact that the aging process is not well known or extensively explored. While large corporations automatically permit this process to take place within their distribution network, artisanal chocolate manufacturers will keep batches of chocolate in reserve for at least 2 months before tempering, molding, and packing them. Before we say goodbye to our tasty trip through the world of chocolate, let us not only remember how it was made, but also be grateful for how it has changed from an old potion to a modern treat. Feel free to share the sweetness with your friends and subscribe for more fun adventures.